Tension erupts on live TV as two powerful figures clash in a heated, no-holds-barred confrontation. What started as a political debate quickly spirals into a shocking, personal exchange, leaving the audience stunned. Words fly, accusations are made, and the air is thick with intensity. Who will come out on top? Stay tuned. This is a moment you won't want to miss. A confrontation between two well-known political figures took place on live television, capturing the attention of viewers across the nation. This wasn't a typical debate or interview. It was a direct clash, marked by opposing views, strong words, and a palpable tension that grew as the conversation progressed. The live TV setting meant that every word, every gesture, and every pause was being watched in real time by an eager audience. It was a rare moment where viewers could witness the raw, unfiltered dynamics of a political disagreement unfold before their eyes. As the debate began, it quickly became clear that this was not going to be a calm exchange of ideas. Instead of the usual back and forth where participants politely disagree and offer counterpoints, the conversation was much more confrontational. One of the individuals immediately took a firm stance, expressing their views with strong conviction. The tone of their voice was unwavering, giving little space for any kind of compromise or understanding. They presented their arguments in a way that seemed intended to challenge the other's position directly, almost daring them to respond. The other individual, not one to back down, immediately shot back with their own response. There was no hesitation in their reply. They too presented their points firmly, determined to make their perspective known. It became clear that this was not just a debate. It was a confrontation. The two figures were not merely exchanging ideas. They were actively trying to dismantle the other's arguments and establish their own position as the stronger one. The back and forth was rapid, each trying to outdo the other with sharp words and well-reasoned points. As the discussion continued, the intensity of the exchange escalated. The audience, who had tuned in expecting a more typical political discussion, began to sense the tension growing. It wasn't just the forcefulness of their words. It was the way each side seemed to challenge not only the other's views, but also their very character. The atmosphere in the room was charged, and viewers could feel the stakes rising. The political debate was no longer just about policy. It had become a test of strength, each individual trying to assert dominance over the other. What made this moment particularly noteworthy was the nature of the confrontation itself. It wasn't merely a difference in political ideologies or a disagreement over specific policies. The exchange revealed a deeper level of animosity, something that went beyond the usual partisan divide. Both figures seemed to feel personally attacked by the other's arguments. This personal element in the conversation made the exchange more than just a typical political dispute. It became a moment of high drama that left viewers on the edge of their seats. The audience could sense that what was being discussed was deeply important to both individuals, making their disagreement all the more compelling. The power of live television is that it captures such raw, unscripted moments. There is no editing, no cutting away to soften the impact of the conversation. Everything happens in real time, and the intensity of the confrontation was magnified because of this. As the conversation unfolded, viewers could see the genuine emotions behind the words. The looks on their faces, the gestures, and the way their voices cracked or steadied under pressure all added layers to the confrontation. The individuals were not just participating in a discussion, they were fully immersed in a moment of high stakes, and it was evident that both were determined to make their mark. It wasn't just the audience watching from home who felt the impact of the confrontation. The individuals involved, too, seemed acutely aware of the weight of the moment. With every new argument, each tried to ensure that their point not only made sense, but also struck at the heart of the other's position. The stakes were high, and there was no room for indecision or retreat. It wasn't just about winning the debate, it was about asserting one's power in front of a large, attentive audience. Every comment was loaded with significance, and every rebuttal had the potential to shift the momentum in favor of one side or the other. The intensity of the moment was also due to the fact that live TV strips away the usual barriers between public figures and the audience. There is no room for scripted responses or controlled environments in such a setting. The individuals involved were reacting instinctively, and that made their reactions all the more powerful. This was real, unfiltered emotion, and it resonated with the audience in a way that a standard political debate never could. In some ways, it felt like watching a true confrontation, a battle of wills, ideas, and personal conviction. It wasn't just a political disagreement. It was a clash of identities and values, each figure trying to prove that their stance was the right one. As the conversation continued, the tension in the room only grew. Each new point raised by either side seemed to build upon the last, creating a snowball effect of intensity. The audience, who might have expected a more civil and reasoned debate, found themselves captivated by the drama unfolding before them. The stakes of the confrontation had never been more clear. This was a defining moment, a chance for each individual to make their position known in a way that could have lasting consequences. With every passing minute, it became evident that this would not be a simple exchange of ideas. It was a rare and unforgettable confrontation, played out before a captivated audience. The confrontation between two political figures happened in a setting that was critical to the entire exchange, the live television broadcast. This particular environment made the event unique, as it was broadcasted for everyone to watch in real time. Television has long been a powerful medium for political discourse, allowing the public to see and hear leaders, candidates, and public figures speak directly on issues that matter. However, in this case, the setting was much more than just a regular political interview or debate. The live TV element added an extra layer of intensity, creating a situation where the individuals involved were fully aware that everything they said and did would be observed by a large, attentive audience. This environment was essential because it turned an ordinary political discussion into something much more impactful. Being live meant that there were no takebacks or editing. Whatever was said could not be removed or adjusted. In the world of live television, every word carries weight, and every gesture is visible to viewers. There is a sense of immediacy and rawness to live broadcasts that pre-recorded content simply cannot match. It is in this context that the conversation between the two figures unfolded, and their interaction became more than just a political disagreement. It became a spectacle. The audience, both in the studio and at home, could sense that something intense was happening, that they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered long after the broadcast ended. The nature of a live setting also meant that the individuals involved had to think and react on their feet. There was no time for carefully considered responses, as there might have been in a scripted event. Each of them had to respond instantly to the other's points, quickly adapting to the direction the conversation was taking. This allowed for a more dynamic and unpredictable exchange. In a typical debate or interview, individuals often have the opportunity to prepare their answers. But in a live TV setting, preparation is not as effective. Everything had to happen in the moment, which meant that both sides were continually responding to the pressure of the situation, trying to outmaneuver the other and gain the upper hand. Live television, by nature, brings a certain sense of vulnerability. It is not like a controlled setting where individuals can rehearse or modify their responses before they are seen by the public. The real-time aspect of this confrontation meant that the two figures involved could not hide their reactions or emotions. If they were frustrated, angry, or determined, the audience could see it immediately. It was an unfiltered view into their personalities and how they handled conflict under pressure. The raw emotions on display, whether in the form of a heated exchange, an intense stare, or an unwavering response, added to the drama of the moment. In this way, the live broadcast didn't just showcase the political conflict between the two individuals. It exposed their humanity, revealing the tensions and stress they experienced in that moment. Additionally, the live TV format had a unique impact on the audience's experience. Viewers were not merely spectators, they were participants in a shared moment of tension. Because everything was happening in real time, there was no way for the audience to know how the conversation would evolve. Would it continue escalating? Would one side back down or concede? The unpredictability of the situation kept viewers on edge, unable to look away as the confrontation grew more intense. As the debate unfolded, Viewers felt as though they were right there in the room with the participants, experiencing the tension firsthand. This direct connection between the audience and the exchange made the moment even more powerful and memorable. The live setting also added an element of transparency that isn't always present in other formats. In most political discussions, there is often an element of curation. The conversation is carefully crafted, and the participants have the luxury of time to think through their responses. But in live television, what you see is what you get. The audience has the opportunity to watch the unvarnished version of the debate, with no editing or controlled responses. This made the confrontation feel much more authentic, as if the participants were not following a script, but instead engaging in a genuine exchange of ideas, frustrations, and challenges. Every reaction, every pause, every response felt like a real moment in time, not something staged or manipulated for effect. Furthermore, the live TV setting ensured that the confrontation had a wide-reaching impact. The broadcasted event reached millions of viewers who were tuning in from all over, each person witnessing the same intense exchange unfold. This large-scale exposure added to the stakes of the confrontation. Not only were the participants speaking to each other, but they were also speaking to an entire nation, with their words and actions potentially influencing public opinion. The audience at home, watching this unfiltered interaction, would have their own reactions, which could in turn influence how they viewed the individuals involved. In many ways, the live TV format turned what might have been a private or isolated political discussion into a public spectacle, seen by countless people who would carry the memory of the event with them. All of this combined to create a situation that was far from ordinary. The live TV setting played a crucial role in making this confrontation stand out. It wasn't just a typical exchange of political opinions. It was a raw, real-time spectacle that amplified the intensity of the debate and made it a memorable event for those who witnessed it. The individuals involved were not just debating policies, they were doing so under the full scrutiny of an audience, fully aware that their every word and gesture was being broadcast for all to see. This added an undeniable weight to their words and actions, making it a significant moment in both political discourse and television history. As the confrontation unfolded, it quickly became evident that the audience was not simply watching a standard political discussion, but rather a highly charged and emotional exchange. The two figures involved were not speaking in a calm, reasoned manner. Instead, they were deeply engaged in a passionate back and forth, each trying to make their point while challenging the other's position. The tension in the room was palpable, and the viewers, both in the studio and at home, could feel the growing intensity. What started as a political conversation soon turned into something much more dramatic, leaving the audience stunned by the unexpected nature of the talk. In typical debates or political interviews, the participants tend to keep things professional, often trying to stay composed even when their views are in direct opposition. However, in this particular confrontation, that level of restraint was noticeably absent. The individuals involved were not merely sharing their opinions, they were actively questioning each other's beliefs and motives. Every argument felt personal, as if each comment was meant to undermine not just the other's position, but their very credibility. It was a stark contrast to the usual, more formal style of political discourse, where the exchange of ideas is often polite and measured. The audience, who may have tuned in expecting a standard political debate, quickly realized that this would not be a typical exchange. They were witnessing something far more intense. As the discussion continued, it became clear that both individuals were not simply trying to present their views, they were determined to win. This determination led to an escalating level of intensity as each side pushed harder to make their case. The tone of the conversation grew sharper and the arguments became more direct. It wasn't just about policy or ideology anymore. It was about proving who was right and who could outmaneuver the other. The audience's reaction was one of shock and surprise. What they were watching was far beyond what they had expected from a live broadcast. There were moments when the individuals involved raised their voices and the exchanges between them were filled with emotion. These were not the calm, controlled responses one might expect from seasoned politicians, but rather heated and passionate remarks. The shock came not only from the words being said, but from the way those words were delivered. The audience could see the conviction behind each statement, and it was clear that both figures were fully committed to defending their positions no matter what. This kind of confrontation on live television is rare, and it is this rarity that made the moment so impactful. The audience was seeing something genuine and unscripted, a real-time confrontation that could not be edited or softened after the fact. There was no chance for either side to backtrack or smooth over a difficult statement. Once a comment was made, it was out there for everyone to hear, and there was no taking it back. This made the exchange more authentic and unpredictable, as neither side knew exactly how the other would respond. The dynamic between the two figures created an environment where anything could happen, and the audience was left on edge, waiting to see how the confrontation would unfold. What made the audience's reaction even more significant was the sense of participation they felt in the moment. As viewers, they were not passive observers but active witnesses to an unfolding drama. They could feel the tension rising, and with every new comment or challenge, the stakes seemed higher. The unpredictability of the exchange kept everyone engaged, as no one could be sure how it would end. Would one figure concede, or would the exchange continue to escalate? This sense of uncertainty created a shared experience among the audience, who found themselves captivated by the dramatic nature of the confrontation. The intensity of the discussion was compounded by the emotional responses of both individuals. Each statement was not just a political argument, but a personal declaration of values, beliefs, and identity. This added another layer of shock for the audience as they realized that what they were witnessing wasn't just a debate. It was a battle for political and personal survival. The words being exchanged carried deep meaning, and the stakes were high for both sides. Each person was not simply defending a political position but was, in a sense, defending who they were and what they stood for. This made the confrontation feel even more significant, as it was not just about winning an argument. It was about asserting one's beliefs in front of a public audience. The surprise for the audience was also in how quickly the conversation moved from one point to another. In the beginning, it might have seemed like a simple disagreement over policy or values, but as the discussion progressed, it became clear that the individuals were not only trying to make their points, they were also trying to outmaneuver each other. The arguments shifted quickly, and the conversation never stayed on one topic for long. This rapid movement created an environment of constant tension, as the audience was left trying to keep up with the fast-paced exchange. Every new statement felt like it could change the direction of the conversation entirely, leaving the viewers wondering what would come next. As the debate continued, it was clear that this was not a typical political conversation. The raw emotion, the sharp words, and the sense of urgency made it something entirely different. The audience, who had likely tuned in expecting a more traditional format, found themselves unexpectedly captivated by the unfolding drama. The confrontation was not just about policy. It was about personal beliefs, political power, and the willingness to stand firm in the face of challenge. This made the talk not only shocking but also deeply engaging, as the viewers realized they were witnessing something much more significant than a simple disagreement. It was a rare moment in television, one that left a lasting impact on everyone who watched. The conversation that took place between the two political figures was filled with unexpected and surprising comments, which played a central role in capturing the attention of the audience. These remarks were not typical of a regular political debate. Instead of the usual careful presentation of facts or respectful disagreements, the exchange was marked by bold, sometimes shocking statements that challenged not only the other person's ideas, but also their character and integrity. It was as if both figures were determined to push the boundaries of what might be expected in a live TV conversation, aiming to make a strong impact on both their opponent and the viewers at home. As the discussion unfolded, it quickly became clear that each participant was prepared to make statements that would catch the audience off guard. These comments were not only directed at the positions held by the other side, but they also often crossed into personal territory. One might expect a heated argument over policy or political ideology, but what transpired went much further. The comments were direct and at times even confrontational, indicating a level of intensity that went beyond the usual back and forth in such debates. The surprising nature of these remarks kept the audience in a state of suspense, never quite knowing what would come next. Some of the surprises came from the way each side framed their argument. Rather than sticking strictly to policy or facts, both figures ventured into areas that were more emotional, more personal. They made statements that seemed designed not just to defend their own positions, but also to call into question the motivations of the other. These remarks were meant to unsettle, to shake the foundation of the opposing argument, making it more difficult for the other side to respond with a calm or measured counterpoint. As a result, the debate became less about the facts themselves and more about the personal stakes involved. The comments made were not just intellectual challenges but also attacks that carried significant emotional weight. This tactic of surprise created an atmosphere of unpredictability that kept the audience hooked. With each new statement, it became harder to predict what direction the conversation would take. Each remark seemed to come out of nowhere, sometimes derailing the conversation entirely and forcing the other to adapt quickly. This unpredictability turned the exchange into something far more intense and captivating than a typical political debate, where the issues are usually well established and both sides are prepared for the usual arguments. Instead, the audience was presented with something much rawer, as if they were witnessing a spontaneous confrontation that could go in any direction. What made the comments even more striking was the confidence with which they were delivered. In typical political settings, participants often hesitate before making bold claims, weighing their words carefully to avoid missteps. However, in this instance, neither figure hesitated. The statements were made with clear conviction, and the audience could sense the determination behind them. These were not comments designed to test the waters or see how the other side might respond. They were calculated, deliberate attacks meant to shift the conversation in their favor. The confidence with which they were delivered made the comments even more powerful, and the intensity of the exchange was magnified by this certainty. The nature of these surprising comments had a significant effect on the flow of the conversation. It was no longer a debate based solely on the merits of ideas. Instead, it became a battle of personalities, with each side attempting to not only prove their points, but also to discredit the other. This shift in focus made the entire interaction feel more like a dramatic performance than a typical policy discussion. Every word became a weapon, every remark a potential turning point that could determine the outcome of the debate. The audience could feel the stakes rising with every new surprise, unsure of where the conversation might lead. Furthermore, the unexpected nature of the comments highlighted the high level of emotional investment from both sides. These were not carefully prepared responses, but rather impromptu remarks made in the heat of the moment. The unpredictability of the conversation mirrored the emotional intensity felt by those involved. The audience could sense that both figures were deeply committed to their positions, and their comments were meant not only to win the argument, but to make a statement about their personal values and beliefs. This emotional intensity added another layer of complexity to the conversation, as it was no longer just about political opinions. It was about pride, identity, and the willingness to take bold risks. The surprising remarks also created a sense of tension that held the audience's attention. It was clear that both figures were not simply going through the motions of a typical debate. They were actively engaging with each other in a way that felt almost confrontational. Each comment had the potential to escalate the situation further, and this sense of volatility kept the audience on edge. There was always the feeling that at any moment, the conversation could shift dramatically, and a new, even more surprising statement could be made. This created a sense of excitement and unpredictability that made the debate far more engaging than the usual back-and-forth exchanges people are used to seeing on live TV. What was most remarkable about these comments was the way they shattered expectations. Viewers might have come to the broadcast expecting a standard political discussion, but what they got was something much more intense and personal. The nature of the comments broke away from the expected format and instead introduced a level of surprise that no one could have predicted. The intensity of the discussion was fueled by these bold remarks, which not only challenged the positions of the other, but also added a level of drama and emotion that was absent from more typical debates. It was this surprising, unpredictable quality that made the event so remarkable, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who witnessed it. The nature of the live television broadcast played a crucial role in shaping the dynamics of the exchange. The fact that the confrontation happened in front of a live audience, with the conversation unfolding in real time, significantly heightened the stakes for everyone involved. In such a setting, every word and action was exposed to millions of viewers. The live TV format ensured that there would be no chance to edit or soften any remarks made, making the entire interaction raw, unfiltered, and immediately accessible to anyone watching. This format allowed the audience to witness everything as it happened, without the opportunity for the participants to correct their statements or adjust their tone after the fact. The live broadcast was a key factor in making this confrontation stand out. Unlike pre-recorded interviews or debates, live television offers a sense of immediacy and vulnerability. When an exchange happens in real time, there is no opportunity for anyone involved to second-guess their responses. What the audience sees is the true unvarnished exchange of ideas, unmediated by the time lag or the editing process. The participants were fully aware that their every word was being broadcast to a large audience, which added a layer of pressure and intensity to the confrontation. This pressure made the exchange feel more dramatic, because every moment was high stakes. This live setting also made the conversation more authentic and real. It removed any barriers between the participants and the audience. Viewers could see the reactions of both individuals as the conversation progressed. There was no chance to hide nervousness, frustration, or anger. If a statement stung, it was visible in real time. This made the audience feel like they were not just watching from a distance, but were actively involved in the event. The tension in the room was palpable, and because the broadcast was live, viewers could sense the immediacy of the situation. They knew that the stakes were high because there was no way to alter the course of the conversation. Each new response could dramatically change the direction of the exchange, and the participants were fully aware of that. Additionally, the live broadcast allowed viewers to experience the unpredictability of the interaction. In many situations, people prepare their responses carefully, thinking through what they want to say before speaking. But in a live television setting, responses had to be immediate and instinctive. This meant that neither person could predict exactly how the other would respond, which made the conversation more dynamic. There was no time for rehearsals or planned talking points. Everything had to happen in the moment, creating a sense of real-time urgency. The uncertainty of the exchange kept the audience on edge, eager to see how the discussion would unfold. Moreover, because the broadcast was live, the audience could feel the tension building. They could sense that something was different about this conversation. It wasn't just about two people exchanging opinions. It was about something deeper, a battle of wills, each participant trying to assert dominance in the conversation. This sense of power struggle was visible to the viewers, who watched as each side tried to take control of the discussion. The way they responded to each other's comments, their facial expressions, and body language all conveyed the underlying emotions and stakes of the moment. The audience was drawn into the drama of the confrontation, feeling as if they were witnessing a pivotal moment in real time. The nature of live television also ensured that the participants were completely aware of the public visibility of their words. When something is broadcast live, every action is magnified, and the weight of public perception is heavier. This sense of constant observation likely influenced how the conversation played out. Both sides may have felt the pressure to defend their positions more aggressively, or to be more assertive in their points because they were aware that the entire nation was watching. The live aspect of the broadcast made every interaction feel more consequential because there was no way to withdraw or take back anything said. This unfiltered nature of the conversation added a layer of authenticity and immediacy that wouldn't have been present in a more controlled or scripted setting. The audience's connection to the live broadcast was also a significant factor in the conversation's impact. In a world of edited content and filtered interactions, the chance to witness something real, raw, and unscripted was a powerful experience. Viewers were not just passive observers. They were part of the unfolding event. The tension in the room The back-and-forth exchanges and the dramatic shifts in the conversation were all happening live, and the audience could feel the intensity of it. This sense of participation made the moment more engaging, as the audience felt that they were experiencing the event alongside the participants. There was no delay or editing that would take away from the immediacy of the moment. The audience was seeing everything as it happened. Furthermore, the unpredictability of live television meant that the outcome of the conversation was uncertain. Would the participants back down or escalate the situation? How would they respond to each new challenge or remark? These unanswered questions created a sense of suspense that kept the viewers invested in the exchange. Unlike a prepared debate or interview, where the outcome may be more predictable, live television created a sense of unpredictability that made the confrontation feel more dramatic and intense. The audience was left on the edge of their seats, eager to see how the conversation would evolve. The live format also highlighted the vulnerability of the participants. In other settings, people might have the opportunity to rehearse their responses or rethink their approach. But in a live broadcast, there is no time for second thoughts. Everything is happening in real time, and the participants must react quickly, often without fully considering the potential consequences of their words. This created an atmosphere of raw emotion and authenticity that added to the tension of the exchange. Viewers could sense the pressure the participants were under, knowing that every word was being broadcast and scrutinized by millions of people. This vulnerability contributed to the overall sense of drama and intensity that defined the conversation. In a live television setting, the potential for surprise was always present. The unscripted nature of the exchange meant that anything could happen, and viewers were left wondering what would come next. Every new statement carried the possibility of shifting the direction of the conversation or intensifying the conflict. This unpredictability kept the audience engaged and made the entire event feel more significant. The live format allowed the participants to showcase their true selves, unfiltered and unmediated, creating a level of engagement that wouldn't have been possible in a more controlled or scripted environment.